We recognize that we are economically the biggest power in Europe, and therefore it is in our responsibility to make these steps forwards and to lead also. But leading doesn't mean running away. Leading means to bring all the European partners together and to integrate also the smaller European partners into our space security architecture.
Hey SpaceWatchers, and welcome to another Space Café Radio. Today we have the chance to discuss a historic document that marks a turning point for Germany, the first ever German space security strategy, released on 19th of November 2025. This strategy acknowledges that space has become a contested domain, that Germany is deeply dependent on space-based infrastructure, and that threats from cyber attacks to jamming to kinetic asset tests are real and already happening, according to Germany's Defense Minister Boris Pistorius in his speech at the BDI Space Congress in September this year. It is an ambitious paper, from early warning satellites to responsive launch to European and international collaboration. So let's unpack what it means politically, military, and for Europe's space and defense future. My guest is Michael Kniepen, the sector head at the MOD and in charge for the newly released space security strategy. Thanks for joining us to make sense of this major shift in German and European space security policy. How are you doing today?
Fine. First of all, thank you very much for having me in your well-known podcast and giving me the opportunity to speak about our new strategy. Today, you see a civil servant after a long period of a long process to come to this point to have a whole of government strategy on space security.
I bet the creation of this strategic document takes a long time, a long period of interaction with others, and I think as well this coordination with other directorates or with other ministries. But can you first of all define for us what makes the strategy an historic document?
So first of all, it's historic in the terms that it is the first German strategy on space security. When it comes to the content, I would keep the assessment of historic or not to the historians or to the scientific audience or the public audience. But we are very proud about our whole of government strategy on space security because, as I've already mentioned, it was a long process, a lot of communication to come to this point, to have a strategy which brings together all these different viewpoints and also the different interests between the ministries.
Germany defines space as an independent operational domain now. So how late are we to this game, and what does this fundamentally change course?
So first of all, our NATO partners recognize space as a warfighting domain already in 2019. So there was already awareness of the importance of space security, and there was also awareness that things are happening in space we have to take care about. Back in this time, we had the problem, like many other countries, that we don't have this kind of awareness in the society, and the military wasn't as much in the focus as it should have been already at this time. You remember the first attack of Russia on Ukraine was in 2014. So this could have been the first wake-up call for Germany, but for many European partners as well. But the real wake-up call came with the full-scale invasion of Russia into Ukraine in 2022. This was a moment when the Chancellor at this time recognized in the German Parliament, the Bundestag, that we need to invest more into the German armed forces. And this was a moment he put 100 billion euros on the table to invest in capabilities. And this was the first starting point to say, okay, what are the priorities where we should invest to? And at this moment, space wasn't on the focus, but it came on the focus. So during the process of writing this new strategy, bringing on the assessment side all the knowledge together, we realized really, okay, we have to invest a lot more to guarantee our space security in the upcoming years. And during this process, we started with the planning of capabilities we need to have in space. So when we came out with our strategy, we have already a concrete plan for capabilities in space we need in the upcoming years.
I see. And is that time frame the beginning when you start writing on the strategy, or was there a nucleus existing before?
Oh, there was already a nucleus before, and there was already the knowledge, but there wasn't the political momentum to really change things. But already during the process, when the former German government for the first time wrote down a national security strategy, there was a clear signal that space is the main we have to care about. And it was also written down in the national security that we will have a space security strategy. But sometimes things need a little bit of time.
Good things take a while.
Yeah.
The strategy, as it is released, highlights deep dependencies on space for every sector. Do policymakers and the public understand how fragile this foundation space is?
I think we have a rising awareness. A lot of people understand that there is really a fragile founding of our modern life, which relies on space. But of course, you can raise this awareness a lot. And this is also part of the strategy to raise the awareness in the public. To say, hey, people, look at it. There's so many dependencies on space already in today's life. And these dependencies are critical for the society as a whole, but of course also for the armed forces, because our modern armed forces rely a lot more on space capabilities in the past and will rely even more in the future.
So do you think that Germany will understand the necessity why we invest in space? Because today the public reflection is more on astronauts are cool. These are envoys of humanity, or these are part of the national pride as astronauts. And over the last years, when the public spoke about space, it was astronautical human space flight. And that narrative, do you see that changing?
Absolutely. You also can see it in other parts regarding to our security. There was even an awareness in the public before it was in some parts of the political parties to invest more into our armed forces capabilities. So when you look into the polls a couple of years ago, there was support in the society to invest more into the armed forces. And I'm sure it fits also in regard to the space. There is an awareness. Of course, we can raise this awareness even more, but the society will support.
In his speech, the minister named Russia and China openly, detailing cyber attacks, jamming, kinetic tests, and more. Do you see that in the strategy reflected?
Yes, of course. So we have a chapter about our space awareness, recognizing threats in the area of safety, but also in the area of security. So this assessment you will see is reflected in the strategy. Also in regard to Russia and also in regard to China and other actors which are probably opponents in space.
Would you consider the strategy as the most honest assessment Germany has ever published in this domain space? Of course, we said it before, but being so direct.
Yeah, generally we tend to be more clear and more outspoken in our assessments because things are developing. So we have to see that this is the first strategy published by security strategy published by the new government. And in the last couple of months, a lot of things happened. We realized that the United States, under the second Trump administration, will focus their engagement not only to Asia, to the Indo-Pacific, but firstly to their own home country. And realizing that fact, we have to be honest in our assessment that we need to do more nationally, but of course also with our European partners in the European Union and other partners.
If Germany acknowledged these threats, as we mentioned before, what concrete new capabilities are necessary to respond?
We need capabilities in the whole spectrum. So from communication to reconnaissance, to the ability to conduct our own operations in space, including offensive operations. So there is no field in capabilities where we will not invest.
What you're saying is mainly we're starting pretty much from a low level of engagement that we have today.
We are already, I would say, a space nation which has some capabilities, especially when it comes to reconnaissance out of space. We have very good, very high-level capabilities there. But of course, there are also fields where we don't have capabilities yet. And to be honest, to be a real space power, we need a lot of more capabilities where we are more, not just say completely independent, but independent that we can conduct our own operations and defend our own interests in space.
In the press, it was to read before the announcement about credible deterrence in space. So what does German deterrence in space look like without escalating conflicts?
Deterrence is built up on different pillars. So one pillar is build up responsive space capabilities. That means that we show our opponents that we can very quick shoot up capabilities when they shot them down. So this is one part of credible deterrence. The other part is we need to have capabilities to deny our opponents to use their space capabilities in the space or on the ground. Part of deterrence could be the capability to conduct the precision strikes on ground infrastructure of the opponent. To be credible deterrent means you need to have capabilities on different fields.
So we are not talking about placements of weapon in space, just as it was said during conferences, some effectors in space, potentially non-kinetic impactors, right?
Absolutely. We are part of the declaration that we won't use anti-satellites weapons which cause debris in space. We are fully on this commitment, but we need to build up capabilities to conduct missions in space. This could be non-kinetic, as you have already mentioned. It could be jamming. It could be in the electromagnetic spectrum. It could also be that you jam the uplink. Could also be that you go or use your cyber force to hack the opponent's satellites. So there are a lot of ways to conduct operations without kinetic anti-satellite weapons.
How far is Germany's leadership willing to go, so politically and legally?
First of all, it is still in our interest to use the space on a peaceful manner. And we are fully committed to the Space Treaty from 1967. We are one of the main actors in the United Nations Standing Working Group on the Prevention of an Arms Race in Outer Space. We are also fully committed to the behavioral approach, which means we want to foster legislation in the United Nations that forbids dangerous behavior in space. And we will all invest a lot in these diplomatic approaches. But it is also very important that we could deter and defend in space.
Germany, as an upcoming strong space power, expects leaderships, I assume, I'm sure. So why Germany, and what would be the benefit for Europe?
There must be also a benefit for Europe, because also when we act nationally, we act in a European sense, because we understood that our future and our own power is also relied on our deep European partnership. But when we will this come more into the role. We do it because we recognize that we are economically the biggest power in Europe, and therefore it is in our responsibility to make these steps forwards and to lead also. But leading doesn't mean running away. Leading means to bring all the European partners together and to integrate also the smaller European partners into our space security architecture.
I see. Are we finally aligning either EU, NATO, or creating even more structural complexity?
Aligning these different organizations is always very difficult. You can see it already when you want to bring together all the different ministries on the national level, which becomes even harder when you try to bring different nations together with different interests. But we are committed to be a real powerful member of NATO, of the European Union, and we also want to take responsibility in other international organizations like the European Space Agency. And we also have to find different instruments and means to not align them, but to use each organization in their sense and to have at some points some complementary use of these different organizations.
What role will industry play from SMEs to prime contractors? Is Germany's industry ready to invest enough to make these ambitions real?
I'm absolutely sure. First of all, without industry, we won't have any capability. So we need the industry as a strong partner to build up our space security architecture. And Germany is a very traditional, high-end technology country with regard to space. So we have a long tradition on the one hand, but we also have a very vital startup scene with newcomers. We have to bring into our procurement, not an easy task, but we work on it. We have to bring them together with the older and bigger players. But what we really need is this kind of partnership and the common approach to build up our national and also our European space architecture.
What are the short-term priorities? So what will happen tomorrow? So what are the must-happen steps?
There are a lot of steps. I won't prioritize them because this is more part of the operational experts. But first of all, we need all the capabilities for full picture about what is happening in space. So space awareness is very important. Then a reliable and reconnaissance from space is very important. And it's very important to do the first steps in programs and investing in capabilities to conduct space operations.
Space situation awareness, the comms or ISR part, are assets in space. What will take, let's face it, potentially a year or 2 years if they are fast to get something up. Yeah. And then in parallel, I hope that education will come. The growth of the ground segment will be there. Am I correct with this assessment?
Absolutely. You have to work on different fields in different speeds. This is important to understand, there is no approach one fits for all. You have to find different approaches for different things you want to realize in space.
Let's get out your crystal ball. What will Germany's space security posture look like in 2030 if the strategy is fully implemented?
I'm not sure about a full implementation in 5 years. The reach out of our strategy goes even far beyond.
This question is there ever a fully implemented stage possible?
No, because the developments are so fast. And what is very important, where we have to come to, is also with regard to the whole responsive space approach, that we are able to shoot up in very short time capabilities and to have our own independent access to space with micro launchers from Europe in the farther future, also with bigger launchers and also with heavy launchers where we don't have 3 or 4 starts per year, but many more.
But here you talk about a European context, not necessarily a German context, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
My final question is, what are the biggest risks, politically or operational, that could derail it?
There is, for example, on the industry side, the risk that we probably invest into a startup which isn't able to build a micro launcher which works. We will be more risky when it comes to our investments. So we have this inherent risk on the industry side. But of course, we have always a risk on the political side that we will lose the political support or lose the support in the society. Today, that security is intervened, so our opponents are already trying to influence our own society. So the support of the society isn't granted. We have to work on it as well. So there are risks on every level.
Michael, thank you very much for your time after this very interesting release of the strategy, and we're looking forward into the full implementation and the next steps. Thank you very much.
Torsten, thanks for having me here.
If you have further questions, reach out to us at radio@SpaceWatch.Global. If you like these or other episodes of Space Café Radio, leave us a rating on your preferred podcast platform. It is the currency of today. And if you want to stay on the pulse of the space industry, please visit our website at www.SpaceWatch.Global and subscribe to our newsletters. And of course, don't forget to become a Space Watcher. I'm Torsten Kriening, publisher at SpaceWatch.Global, your independent perspective on space.